All right, bet. You can see screen. Let's go. Got like 30 minutes here. So I had the reason why I had to kind of put in a little bit of a stall. You guys can see my screen, right? See my screen? Yes, no.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
you're good.
All right, for sure. The reason why I kind of put a pause on the group call because I was dealing with the situation with this unit I was buying on multifamily, and multifamily doesn't necessarily always mean something that actually is listed as multifamily. So the most recent unit that I bought in California was a single family with a detached ADU, right? So it's considered single family on paper, but it's actually a multifamily because multiple people can live in it, right? Whether you're buying in Ohio, whether you're buying in Detroit, whether you're buying in North Carolina, whether you're buying wherever the fuck, the market's always gonna be different. In California, if you don't buy multifamily, you're basically going to be losing money every single month. In that same regard, one of the biggest things that I was experiencing, kind of like a not necessarily a downfall, but something that kind of a pain in the ass was situation with utilities. I never really experienced that just because I had always bought single family. And when I bought multifamily that was listed and zoned as multifamily, built as multifamily, it's putting you in a situation where when you're buying multifamily that isn't listed as multifamily, you have people that are arguing over the span of who's going to cover what utility. You're going to be in a situation where someone doesn't want to pay or take the responsibility of taking over the utilities and then splitting it with the neighbor, for example. So let me go to let me see Wilson. Let me sort of pull up the property. How we buy, but it never fucking loads. Let me see. All right, well, let that shit load. So the property that we had bought, it was in a position where it only had one gas meter, one electrical, and one water meter. It may seem like okay, what's really not that big of a deal, but since that expense is something that's dynamic, you're in a position where there's a lot of individuals that don't want to take on that responsibility. Alongside that, let me see the little Ricardo in here. When it comes to that, is you're going to be in a position where sometimes there's something that I had to do. You're going to having to give it a very big incentive when it comes to actually getting somebody in, and that's something I didn't factor into my holding costs. So a lot of individuals, whether they're buying in California, whatever the fuck, and it's something that I always like to mention to you guys very heavily is factoring in the holding costs because a property can make sense in regards to the actual like purchase of the property. Like the numbers can make sense, the property could cash flow very well. But if it's in a position where the holding costs are going to be extensive, then it may not make sense. For example, if I would have been in a position where the two bed one bath in the front, hopefully I must have my screen sharing real quick, see if it let me pull it up. If I would have been in a situation where the two bed one bath was in a position where it got occupied fast, but then the other part didn't, then I would have been fucked. Like I would have been fucked fronting well over like $1,000 a month. So that's something that I didn't really necessarily contemplate as serious as it was. So let me go back to sharing my screen right here. And in regards to bouncing back from this, you guys can see it, right? This is two bed right here, and then you see the one bed right here. So this is the unit that we bought. This is the one bed, one bath, and this is the two bed, one bath. Although it may not seem like it's a big of a deal with it being utilities that are in the same one, it's in a position where although we're in a position where it's literally attached, it's not that big of a deal. It was a big deal when it comes to tenants because for some reason tenants want the fucking world and they want to actually provide shit. In that same regard, this is how we had to get around it, right? This is obviously the buy box that I was talking about. You guys can see this document on the obviously the watt modules and all the above. But my main focus with that whole spill was getting the right allocation of energy and time because that's what it needed, right? In regards to money, it kind of made sense, but in regards to the allocation of time and energy, it was needed. So where I allocated that was you have to go and pre-screen this unit very heavily before it even becomes yours, right? This is something that I always talk about. But there's going to be also be a time where you have to put incentives because it makes more sense to go and have somebody in there than be in a position where you're fronting a vacancy because fronting a vacancy is inevitable. There's times you could be 6 months, 3 months, 12 months, 8 months, depending on the unit, right? But for example, in order for us to solve that situation, this is the listing description made. You also could check this out on there. There has to be an incentive, right? Alongside that, another thing that people don't talk about. If you guys buy some sort of single family, you convert it, or you buy something like this where it has a built-in, or you buy multifamily, I say Angel and Alexis are trying to buy a multifamily, or they're trying to buy a single family with units like this. Another big thing is there has to be a division in regards to personal privacy, because you're gonna get a lot of people that get attracted to the fact that this is brand new construction in regards to like a remodel or rebuild. But if they don't have their private space, even though like it's literally just a fucking fence, they're gonna be bitching, they're gonna be complaining, and they're not gonna make it convert. If I did not do this, if I did not put myself in a position where after we passed the inspection, after we said, all right, this property is good to go, I fuck with it, and I'm gonna go and proceed with the purchase. If we did not, me and my business partners did not go and do this, we would have been fronting. I think it was the payments like $2,400 a month. So if we would have had the first one did convert, so it would have been right around $1,000 a month. We've been fronting every single month, and it's not crazy because it's part of the game. That's shit that happens, but you have to understand that you only have an extended period of time until that first payment is due. Even though you could push it back till the 15th of the month. I was in a position where I didn't want to come out of pocket for it. I contacted the loan servicer. I said, hey, I want my first payment to be on the 15th of September, as opposed to the 1st. So that allowed me to go and collect rent from these people that are giving first month's rent, deposit, all the above. And that's what's going towards the purchase instead of my own money. If it would have been on the 1st, higher likelihood I would have been out of pocket, right? Even though I closed them, the person like maybe 2, 3, 4 days, I got the deposit and all that stuff from the actual person that converted on the ADU. And in regards to also collecting on the ADU, even though we collected over $1,000 a month, you have to go and also cover your ass when you're doing an incentive, which was what we did was the 50% off first month's rent to get them in the door. If I would have said 100% is the first month's rent, right? It's gonna be $1,000 and a $500 deposit. If they would have fucked some shit up and they would have left, I only have $500. So you should never discount the deposit unless you absolutely have to. You should only discount the first month's rent if it's a cash tenant. The reason why I say that again is, like I said, if you're in a position where they go and they fuck some shit up, would you rather have $1,000 to fix it if it's $1,000 a month, or would you rather have $500 to fix it? In that same regard, the other thing you have to factor in regards to you actually buying the whole property, which is something that we factored in, which made this purchase actually make sense in regards to the holding costs, was what are your rent ready costs? In regards to actually seeing a property like this, as you continue to go and buy and you guys consistently buy, you're going to be in a position where you start to identify things just coming up and you're going to start to understand it as just a whole in general. For example, what you can see from this property already, you guys are in a position where you're like, all right, like, this is a pretty nice property. Like, there's nothing really else to it, but there is. You can see right here, stove. It seems pretty obvious, but there has to be a stove. You don't need to provide a refrigerator. That's something they can provide. Another thing, blinds. It's another thing that's in the spill. Another thing that I didn't necessarily think was going to be a problem, but hopefully you can see a picture right here. This window right here. This type of shit, it seems good in a hypothetical, but this is another rent-ready expense. This is something that I had to do because someone broke this fucking window, right? And the reason why they broke it is because they wanted to go and grab the handlebar that's right here and break in. So this was something that I had personally experienced. It's something that it almost went south in regards to me fronting or necessarily with Alex. But like I said, it's just going to come down to the way that you could be creative with it. And alongside that, the lead follow-up. If I go onto Facebook, I shit not, I was hitting up people every single fucking day. Like every single day. Because who you guys are dealing with, and this is the reason I'm talking mostly about tenants, because this is going to be your biggest, the biggest thing that you deal with. Hopefully it still shows it. I don't know if it deletes the chats or not. But you have to be in a position where you treat it exactly like a sales process, right? If you guys are in a position where you're in sales or you're in some sort of customer service industry, you have to be fucking fast as shit. And you also have to be very patient because the individuals that you're dealing with are not business owners. It's when you're talking to a business owner that's, whether it's a lender, you guys are dealing with insurance companies, whatever the fuck, they're punctual most of the time, they're fast, whatever though. This was literally, look how many fucking people I was messaging just to get 2 people to get into this unit. 2 people to get into this fucking unit. And that's another thing of having the right property management. These were posts that were coming from, I don't even know, like maybe 4 weeks ago. This was like before it even closed. Over and over and over, texting people, following up because they're lazy. They're not, most of the time, they're not in a rush. And alongside that, you also have to identify what is the timeline. Right now, I understood if I was not on their ass to go and see this property, to fill an application, to put a deposit, or just even pay the application fee, if I was speeding it up as fast as possible, and honestly, if I didn't do it at the way that I did it, would have been fucked, because a lot of people right now are going back to school, including myself. I'm literally right outside my campus, right? And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the decision makers you're dealing with, such as the parents, or you're dealing with someone that's maybe going back to college and wants to rent out your unit, Any possible excuse they're going to use to not take action is what they're going to do. Oh, I want to move there, but my kid starts school soon, so we're just going to hold off for 2 months. And in a hypothetical sense, you're like, okay, cool. Like they're waiting for 2 months, boom, boom, boom. You're not going to force them. But at the same time, the bank doesn't give a flying fuck whether their kid starts school tomorrow. So that's something you guys have to obviously factor into consideration. Another thing, in regards to that property that we bought, and also the speed of me, getting the contract signs, getting the people onboarded, you need to think about how can I go and retain this tenant as long as possible, because like almost 50% of you, or even more of you in this call, have a property already, and the tenant placement and the tenant retention is going to be the biggest thing on the planet, because dealing with tenants is the most annoying shit on the planet. We have property management, but even then, you still have partial involvement. How can I go and retain this unit right here, right? This is, like I said, this is the descriptions we sent to different people. Alongside that, if you guys are in a position where you're buying again, Angel, Alexis, Joe, Diego, hit up your old contacts after you gather their data on here on Facebook Marketplace. Christian, another one, and go and say, hey, look, if they're not in a position where they want to go into your unit, go and ask them, like, hey, what do you know anybody that wants to rent out this unit? I'll give you a gift card, give you cash, whatever the fuck. Because that $100, $50 you give us a gift card or a cash incentive is a lot cheaper than fronting the fucking mortgage payment on something unnecessarily. Some units are going to stay longer than others. Some units are going to rent out faster than others. And it's also depending on the season. If you have a really nice unit, but it's December, nobody's going to go in the unit because it's holidays. Another thing is being in a position where, alongside the pre-screening, alongside all of the things that I mentioned previously, you need to be in a position where you're gathering all the data if possible. Just because maybe someone doesn't convert later, but you buy again down the line, you can hit them all up. All of these contacts that I have in here, I either have a phone number, I have an email, I have something in a spreadsheet. So these people could all get directed once they get another unit. So when me and Alex bought this fourplex back in right in the beginning of June, basically like May, the very end of May, literally like the 1st of June, whatever the fuck. All of those people that did not convert there, we brought them over to this property, and one of them actually converted because they wanted this unit. Another thing too, if you guys are in a position where your unit is multifamily, or maybe just has multiple rooms, or it's just in a position where maybe it's a little bit slower. What I've done, I don't know if it's going to show it. Okay, it's not going to show it, but essentially what I did is, since this property is 3-bed, 2-bath, and we had the other property we bought, you just make multiple listings of the same shit but differently. So for example, this is a 1-bed, 1-bath, but it really isn't a 1-bed, 1-bath. So when you have multiple Facebook Marketplace listings, it shows that you're a qualified individual to rent to, and people are inquiring with the property. So even if, for example, this property, which is actually the unit that's been rented for fucking months, is not available, it's not even a 1-bed, 1-bath, I put it up there so then people can inquire on this unit right here, which is the one that we bought back in May or June, which obviously is not available for rent. And anyone that inquired, I said, hey, look, this property is not available anymore. I got their contact. I said, can I shoot you over some information of a unit that's very similar in pricing and also very similar style? Yes, they can. Then we converted them. One of the people that actually converted to the 1-bed, 1-bath, which had to provide the incentive, I had to help them out in regards to making them understand. I had to do the follow-up. They came from a listing that wasn't even real. Like they literally came from this listing right here, which is the one I'm hovering over. And this unit wasn't even for rent. It never was for rent. And it's not even a 1-bed, 1-bath. But when I have multiple targets of ways to bring people in, I can go and just redirect them somewhere else. Alongside that, when you guys are buying these units, whether it's single family, multifamily, whatever the fuck, all you guys need to be in a position where you still follow the vital steps that I mentioned, and being in a position where if it's already a single family unit that has it's like a potential ADU on the side of it, taking all those things that I said into consideration. When your realtor walks it, if they're not in a position where they can understand whether they're separate gas meters or not, that's a red flag, right? In regards to either one, the realtor in and of itself, which most of the time is not going to be the case, just because most realtors know that shit. But sometimes there may be what's considered a sub meter, but the sub meter may be half-assed, right? And that's something that people don't factor in. And if the sub meter is half-assed, and you're in a position where you don't know who the fuck installed it, and you go and inherit this property that has a sub meter, and you go and do the division of the units with the fans and all the above, they have separate utilities, and the sub meter breaks, there's no one to guarantee that work unless you inherit a fucking a warranty, but which is very unlikely. It is very, very, very unlikely, because most of the time for little jobs like that, which make a big difference because the sub meter is simply just dividing the utilities. It's going to be done by someone's deal. And most of the time, I would say probably about borderline 100% of the time, you're not going to be able to find that person. Let me see. But in regards to that aspect of that, these actual properties you guys are purchasing, it's going to need to be in a price range just like this, or else it's not going to make sense. It's not going to make sense. Right now, if you're closing on your property, like Christian is, Jacob's getting under contract, some other individuals right now, once you get from like right around August, it starts to slow down a little bit in regards to the whole aspect of tenant placement, just because holidays, people going back to school, and people just finding a reason to be lazy as fuck. Let me see right here. Let me see. But yeah, you have to sell these fucking units. That's something that I've been experiencing a lot recently. And the other thing, that's what I was about to go to. When you guys have when talking about the retention, right? Alongside asking people referrals, gift cards, all the above, you have to identify what type of tenant do I have, how are they act, and alongside that, how can I go and keep them? For example, one of the tenants that we inherited on a 2-bed, 1-bath. I know that they're a little bit elderly. They're getting government assistance. They don't really work anymore. They have someone in the family that works, but it's mostly just that person. If they're in a situation where I know, okay, well, there's one main person that's the breadwinner, and the other people are a little bit, on the slower side in regards to ability to go and do things, I need to make it as easy, because if the breadwinner leaves and they're on their sole income, I may be in a position where I'm fucked. Like, this guy is one that was and I'm screwed. So in regards to the first person that's being taken care of, I said, okay, how can I go and retain this person as long as possible? We're having solar installed onto the unit. So over there in Bakersfield, I understand Bakersfield hot as shit. I also understand that PG&E, which is the electricity company, fucks up everybody. SoCal Edison, PG&E are always gonna fuck everybody up. And if you're in a position where you have a tenant like that, and they think, okay, well, my landlord doesn't give a fuck about me because he's not installing solar, but everybody else in the block has solar, and my fucking electric bill is $600 a month, and the cherry on top, it's split between the two units. You don't know who the hell is using what. They're gonna leave as soon as the fucking year, the lease comes over here. They're going to leave, and that bank, as I mentioned, does not give a fuck. So you guys have to factor that in. Alongside that, they may be in a position where they say, "Hey, look, I'm gonna need help with the bill." Maybe you pay 50%, they pay 50%. That's still cutting into your bottom line. And there's multiple ways to find things like solar. Also the fencing being shows of the punctuality, and also the responsiveness to any sort of issues that happen in the property, because it's real estate. There's inevitable repairs and inevitable shit that happens to it. But the biggest takeaways I would say you guys want to have is thinking in the eyes of a tenant. Because you always have to think in the eyes of the individual you're trying to work with. Like I told you guys, you think like lenders, you guys can think like tenants, you also guys think like investors just as well. In regards to the tenant side, it's going to be the most pivotal, the most vital situation that's going on, just because people at the most that are most make rash decisions. I don't know if you have any questions in regard, but it's something that was very, very weird. That is in regards to actually buying property, or something along the lines is more traditional. It's more emotional. You can see like people transactions. So, could you guys all hear me? Hear me still or no?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions in that regard? Okay, literally anything. It doesn't have to be in regards to this, but it's something that I want you guys to touch upon, because as you continue to buy more properties, tenants are always going to be the biggest thing. Tenants, and I would say that's pretty much tenants and maybe contractors. That's probably bad, but mostly tenants, because they have no liability. So if you guys don't have any, it's all good. I want you guys just to be touched on that. Like I said, it could be about this, it could be about anything. Like Joe, I know you had asked some questions about that creative financing shit, but I didn't get to talk to you about it in the gym. I can talk about that. Just let me know. If not, I'll call it a wrap. And then I know you guys got shit to do. I got class in like 10, 20 minutes, so still got a little bit of time for you.
Yeah, if you could break down the false primary and the creative financing.
So essentially what Alex and I did was we were in a situation where we were obviously working remote a little bit. It's a little harder for you, Joe, just because you're working as a barber, but there's always a workaround, bro. Essentially, all you're doing is being in a position where you're buying the property and saying it's a primary that you're going to live in it, simply because the area that you're living in is too expensive for you. So obviously, you live in Ventura County. You can say basically telling the lender, the person that makes the final decision, hey, look, this property is too. This area is too expensive for me. I need to go and move to Bakersfield. You're buying in Bakersfield. You're saying it's a primary. You're putting minimal down, right? If you're in a position where you say, hey, it's going to be an investment property, then you're going to put 20% down. The minimum maybe is 15%. In that regard, for primary, the lowest you can put is 3%. If you're in a position where you don't have the proof of income, it'd be like 10%. But like I said, you're going to be in a situation where you come out of pocket with less down. And then in regards to them actually asking, like, oh, do you live here? If you just put a name in a utility that's a low expense one and then have your tenants reimburse you, they're not going to come after you, bro. People do this shit at fucking huge scales. But the best bet for someone in a situation like you, Joe, or Alexis, or Christian, if you guys are buying in Bakersfield, is going from a fourplex and then moving down, or just like trying not to buy like a single family as your first unit unless it has multiple units, just because if you're in a position where you start to like want to go up, so you go from single family and then want to go up to a duplex, triplex, fourplex, they're gonna fight it. They're gonna make you put 20% down. Because if you think about it from the lender's perspective, like I told you guys, think about it from the perspective of the individual you're trying to work with. If they see, okay, well, this dude lived in a fourplex. I mean, this dude lives in a single family home, which is everybody's ideal situation. Everybody wants a single family home. They don't want neighbors. Why the fuck would someone go from a single family home to a duplex, triplex, or fourplex where they have a bunch of people in it? So for your situation, you can go and say, hey, look, I got a spot lined up at this barbershop. I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to start clean. I'm going off of bank statements. I'm going to put 10% down. The property's $300,000, 30% down. And I'm going to rent out one unit. I'm going to live in the other one. It's going to allow you to qualify for more. It's going to lower the amount of money you bring to the table. But in reality, you're renting out every single unit. So you get that appreciation without having to put the 20% down. If you're buying creative finance, which some of you guys may be able to do if it makes sense, and we are able to find you the right opportunity, there's multiple ways that you're able to do it. If the property's paid off, say for example, Joe, you came to me, you're like, hey bro, I want to buy your property. And say one of them was paid off and I didn't want to pay taxes on it. You could come to me and say, hey, look, I'll give you 20 grand, and then I'll give you X amount of in payments. So it'd be 20 grand, and then you say $2,000 a month. And maybe even interest in terms of the actual money that I have in the property, which is equity. And that allows you to not involve the bank. So that's something that you could do as well, since you're in a position where with barbering, there's not a lot of reported income. And then another option is if, for example, say you came to me and I was like, I was struggling, bro. Say, for example, I was fucking upside down on everything. I was like, hey, Joe, like, I need to get rid of this unit. Essentially, what you could do to me is say, hey, Javi, I'll give you whatever you have in terms of equity on the property. Say, for example, right now, me and Alex, we have 30 grand. If you say, hey, bro, I'll give you 30 grand, but let me just take over your payments. Now you're giving me 30 grand. You involve a lawyer and the title company that's just going to give you the access to take over the payments. And now you're in a position where you have access to this property. And then after you have access to the property, you could essentially do whatever the fuck you want with it. Because one, it's not a primary home that you're living in. And two, you're in a position where now you are the owner of the property because you have the deed. People always try to say like, oh, like if I have the loan, then that's my property. No, it's not. No, it's not. If you have the deed, that means you are the owner of the property. That is why it's so essential to be in a position where you understand how to use your lending correctly. But I don't know if that answers your question, Joe, or if you have any questions in that regard. But it seems complicated, but it's really not, bro. I'm really confident that you could get a unit over here in California. It's just going to be one of those three options: either 10% bank statement, 5% to 3%. You get a CPA, they'll write a letter saying that you've been in business for 5 years, and you can qualify for 1 year tax return, or 3, which is creative financing. Creative financing deals will close very fast, but they're harder to find if you need to find the seller directly. They're not going to really be on the market where someone's saying, I'm open to creative finance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you, bro.
But yeah, like you could easily run that up, bro. It's just a matter of identifying the right deal. In regards to your situation of the barbering, you just have to work your sphere of influence and maybe even ours, and just try to get some barbershop to say like, hey, yeah, he actually is going to be working here. That's it. And then even then, like, what they're not gonna go and ask if you're already in escrow for the property, saying, "Hey, provide proof that he has been paying rent to the shop." Because then you can just get the person that you know owns the shop to say he's been paying cash, and there's no trace of it. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a matter of covering your trail, covering your ass. And for properties like that, bro, like that are under $1 million, they're really not gonna be on your ass, bro. They're not. They're just not, because they lose more money going after you than being in a position where, you just sorting the shit out. They'd rather just be like, all right, whatever, fuck it, as long as they make the on-time payments. Because they just either one, want to get paid back, and two, they don't want to chase you because they lose money if they chase you. But anyone else have any questions? Junior, let me see, who else is in here? Junior, Eric, anybody? Homie Cerna, let me know, doggy. If not, I could call it a wrap. And get it cracking. All done. Fuck it. Let me see. All right, my boys. Well, I'll catch you then. If no one has any questions, if you guys have any other like individualized questions you don't want to ask in here, just fucking hit me up. Just text me. But everybody stay on it. Alexis, I know you're gonna sit down with Danae. I know Angel sat down with Danae. And then Christian, I know you're obviously going to expedite that filing. Everything be chilling. But I'll catch y'all, boys. Let me stop this recording. And that's it. Let me see.